issues and their implications on Muslims in America. He also delivers seminars on specialized topics such as social and counseling issues that affect cultural minorities. And at the moment, he is the president of the Foundation of Islamic Knowledge and Research, which is a think tank based in Chicago, Illinois. And without further ado, I will hand it over to Brother Omar.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salam ala Rasul al-Kareem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm honored to be here today. Mufti Hussain invited me to come speak to you guys addressing parenting and some techniques and practical solutions on parenting in relation to some of the topics that were covered last week. I do have a handout here that I'll distribute. I'll just send it around and you can pass it around. This is just something to take away, because I know we often come to lectures, or especially a topic like this where it's much more solution focused. You can have something to take away with you and review afterwards, inshallah, if you want to use it. So in order to discuss parenting, I think that there's a very relevant story that I'd like to start with, which will be an appropriate introduction to the topic at hand. Abu Layth Samarqandi rahmatullahi alayhi relates that HZ Omar radiallahu anhu, during his khilafat, there is a story of a man and that came to HZ Omar with his son to approach him with a complaint. So this man came and sat with his son in front of HZ Omar and complained, and he said, "Yeah, Omar, this person, my son, he disobeys me and he's very disobedient." And HZ Omar radiallahu anhu looked at the son and he said, "Oh child, do you know the rights of the father over the rights of the father over his son?" And the son looked at him and replied, Is there any rights that the child has over the father? And HZ Omar replied, "Yes, there is indeed." And the child asked, "What are they?" So HZ Omar radiallahu anhu said that the first is that it's the responsibility of the father to marry an upright, righteous woman that's got good akhlaq. Second, that he be given a good name. And third, that he be given Islamic education and be taught akhlaq. So the child looked at Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu and said that my father hasn't given me any of these. He said, my mom is somebody who has no Islamic morals or sense of akhlaq, and this is the woman's lap that I grew up on. And my name, his name was Jo'al, which means like a very dark and ugly person. He said, my name is Jo'al and I've been given an ugly name. And finally, I've never been given any Islamic education or been taught akhlaq. So Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu turned to the man and he said that you have the nerve to come and tell me that your son is disobeying you and you've neglected all his rights. He said, get out of here. You're the one that has disobeyed first. So what do we take from this? Often people come to counselors, especially myself and some of the imams, their primary complaint is like, how do I change my son, or how do I change my child? How do I make him obey me? How do I make him do this or do that? The question that we should rather be asking is that, what did we do to create this product? What did we do to create this behavior? And 9 times out of 10, it's about something that we've done, and it's modeling that we've done, and they've learned it along the way from us. So there is the exception, so I don't want to generalize. There's about maybe 1 in 10 out of the cases where the child himself is very troubled or acts out, and there might be some genetic or DNA, genetic reason for his acting out, and that's excusable, and there's no, it's not intended to put any blame on the parent at that point. So we've established that that is very important, as seen through this story, that we take care of our family, to take care of our children, and to give them proper akhlaq, to give them proper manners. And this is reinforced in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. So save yourself and your family from the fire of hell, and then it goes on to describe it. With this, I want to introduce some of the psychological, the conceptualization of the parent-child relationship from a psychological perspective. And that's where, if we look back on the story, the first thing that HZ Omar said was that the mother is given, the child is given a good mother with good akhlaq. Now, there's been so much focus, especially in the literature and research, on the woman in relation to the mom, in relation to the child. So this is, you can plug in the male if that's a primary primary caregiver, but I'll be using the term mother. So the way they kind of conceptualize it is that the mother is actually growing up where if you recall in the story, the son said that this is whose lap that I grew up on. So the lap is actually the first place of education, and that's where the akhlaq is learned. This is where a healthy attachment needs to be formed between the mother and the child. So a child, what happens is, if a proper relationship is formed, if the mother is loving, caring, consistent, and provides structure for the child inculcates this and almost creates an image of the mother in the mind. So where this is relevant, if you think of an example where a child initially, they're afraid to move away from their mother at birth. So they're afraid to go too far, or stray too far from the mother, because out of fear that the mother might not be there when they return, some type of danger. So as the child becomes more and more attached to the mother and learns that the mother is there to protect them and is consistent and is available to them when they return, the child is freely able to move further and further away, and you feel more comfortable about moving away. And they do self-soothing, where a child is sleeping on their own now. So a child will sleep on their own as opposed to sleeping with the mother, because they've introjected this image of the mother in their mind. So the question is, what happens if you don't have a healthy attachment with your child? The result commonly is that the child will split off and will see the world in black and white. Will see things as entirely good or as entirely bad. So he might see mom as being entirely bad, and then other things that give him satisfaction, like his toys or whatnot, as all good. And this has an effect when you're getting older. You start to see things in black and white. You can't appreciate the complexities of life. So you tend to think, if you lose your job, life is bad entirely. Life is, horrible, and I'm doomed. And you just start all of these negative thoughts, which cycles this around. So this is kind of what happens. So if we taking a look at some parenting styles. The parenting style, there are 3 types of parenting styles that psychologists conceptualize. There's the authoritarian parent, and this is your parent that's stereotypically the dictator of the house, that tells the child what to do, how to do it, and doesn't, involve the child in any decision making, is not merciful with the child, and is kind of, forcing things down their throat. This is the authoritarian. And the permissive is actually the one where generally mothers tend to do this, is where they spoil a child, is give them everything they want. They don't say no to the child. They just allow them to kind of run free. And this is actually very damaging. I mean, the idea is that out of this extreme love, so the mother loves their child and cannot say no. And they're actually doing a disservice where they might be coming home with Quran, want to study Quran, and they have, some homework to do, and the mother is too soft to set those boundaries, is too soft to tell them no. And I think a relevant point here is where we have to learn, especially here for the sisters especially, is where to set the boundaries, where to set the line, and not hold it so loose that we cause more harm. If we truly love the child, then we want them to progress and grow, and we don't want to set too loose boundaries. And what comes to mind is the Quran ayat for me, is يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تلهكم أموالكم ولا أولادكم عن ذكر الله ومن يفعل ذلك فأولئك هم الخاسرون. So do not allow your wealth and your children to be a fitna upon you, to be a distraction away from the remembrance of Allah. For those are the people who are amongst the losers. So the distraction away from the remembrance of Allah. So this is very relevant, because if the child, if you have a true love for the child, then what you'll do is you'll set those appropriate boundaries so that they can be the best Muslim child when they grow older. So that they have a sense, they learn things, and they're not spoiled. The best approach is actually the authoritative. And you'll notice a pattern here is where it's the middle path. It's not on this extreme and it's not on that extreme. But rather you set good boundaries and you allow them to grow. You show them love and consistency. So you set some firm boundaries. There are punishments for those actions, and you also show them love. And part of this is the idea of empathy. To be able to empathize with your child, to be able to go to your child, and if you're going to punish them, generally we tend to punish a child, and many times the child doesn't even know what they did. So they'll go off and they'll start crying, and they don't even know what they did to begin with. So what you want to do is you want to, after the punishment, pull them back and ask them what they've done. What have you done? What have you learned? To teach them a lesson. And while you're doing that, it's very important that you say to the child how they're feeling. To reflect how they're feeling. I can understand your frustration. I can understand that you wanted the following, toy, or if you wanted to do the following, or if they're an older child, you wanted to, stay home from school, but the following. So you understand, and that the child feels like there's a connection between you two, and they're better able to hear it. So, in terms of discipline, what is the best form of discipline? So there's a lot of debate about this issue. However, studies have been done and consistently have been shown that positive reinforcement, doing something positive for the child, is the best form of discipline. And negative, for example, hitting the child, it's not close to as effective as the positive. And I'll give you an example of that. For example, I'll give you an example from my own life. I mean, my son, a couple of weeks back, he refused to go to the washroom, and he refused to use the washroom. He just wanted to hold it and mess around. And my wife was really getting upset, and she came and she said, if you don't go in the bathroom, I'm gonna beat you. You're gonna have to, really kind of coming down on him. And he just wouldn't budge. He would refuse. He didn't want to go, kick and scream, throw himself on the ground. And she would just get more mad and enraged and scream at him, and he would just refuse. And it was a power struggle. They were fighting over it. So I said, all right, just give me a second. I came in and I said, let me try it out. So I took him and I said, come here, my son, come sit here. So he sat and I said, you're a good boy, right? I said, you want to be big. So big boys, they don't act like this. In order for you to get big and strong, you need to listen. You need to, you're a very nice boy. Let's go together. So I held his hand and we went together. And no kicking or screaming or anything. He just sat there. Whereas if my wife had persisted, and it was a lot of energy that she had to put in order to get him to the washroom. Whereas she could have spent maybe a little bit extra time to pull him in. Another example of empathizing, let's say you're on the phone and your son comes to you or daughter and says, come, let's go play. Commonly, what would we do? turn around and say, get out of here, can't you see I'm on the phone? Or after you might say, wait a second, I'm on the phone. After the third, fourth time, you'd say, get out of here before I smack you. And then the child will either get upset or try again or run away crying. And what you've done is you've actually modeled impatience. You've showed the child how to be intolerant. So the next time when you ask a child to do something, and you ask him to do it about 3 or 4 times, he'll turn around and he'll scream or yell. Or if he wants a toy and you say no, he'll ask 3 or 4 times. After the third try, he's going to say, he's going to throw a big fit in the store or wherever. So what you want to do is the following. Here's an alternative method. And this is called doing something, training the child to do something incompatible with the behavior you don't want. So let's say the child is jumping on the bed. So you tell them to put their toys on the bed instead. They can't be putting their toys on the bed while they're jumping on it. They can't be doing the same thing at the same time. And you reinforce the action that you want. So you reinforce that, or you tell them to tidy the bed. Or get ready for bed, and they're jumping on the bed. You say, okay, why don't you help me get ready for bed? Put the sheets down, fluff your pillow, whatever you need to do. And you reinforce that, and you tell them, good job, I really need you to do this, it's important, help me out, you're a big boy. And if the child starts engaging in that behavior, then they can't be jumping on the bed. Do you get it? There's a incompatible behavior. Those two cannot go together at the same time. So you reinforce the opposite, right? So here's another example, is where the child is the phone example. You're on the phone, they're bothering you. You turn to the child and you show them understanding, and you tell them that you say to them, just give me 5 minutes. I want you to go get your toys ready. After 5 minutes, we're going to play. So you're giving him hope. You're giving him structure. You're showing him that you're not saying no, we are going to play. And you're giving him a reward for his patience. So you say, all right, go sit there for 10 minutes, set up your toys, I'm coming. So when you go over there, the child is ready to receive you. The child is ready, and they're excited. Another alternative might be using a buzzer clock. So you say, when I'm trying to have a conversation with my wife, my son will come in and he'll say, no, don't talk to mama, let's play. And he'll interrupt the conversation. He won't let me have a conversation with my wife. So I tell him, here's a timer. I set it for maybe 10 minutes. I say, listen, I'm going to have a conversation for about 10 minutes. In the meantime, you watch the clock, and you go set up your toys. And he's excited. It's a game. It's like a game. All right, I'm going to watch the clock. The clock goes off, and the buzzer goes off, and he's excited. He runs back in, and he's ready to play. And he goes, all right, the timer's on. And the key thing here is that you're teaching structure. You're teaching that everything has a place. Everything has a time. And how you deal with it is not through impatience by, flipping out. And there's also a consistency to your action. The whole thing about structure is very important, because if you have structure, routine, and consistency, these are very key. If you have consistency and routine, the child knows what to expect. Things start to happen naturally. If you notice, for example, a college student that goes away to college, generally they find that college students that want to come home frequently and want to come home all the time to see their parents, is that they may have had some conflict in their marital relationship with their parents. There may not have been some structure and consistency. Obviously, some of it is normal, but I'm talking about where they always want to come home. They're always kind of homesick. In comparison to the person who's learned structure and consistency as a child, the college student who goes away, they'll stay away and they'll, contact their parents, and they'll come back at certain times, but there won't be this urgency and need, because they've learned that everything is the same at home. It's consistent. There's a structure. Things are not going to change overnight. So they're a lot more comfortable with doing, their everyday tasks. And it frees up their mind. Maybe another one that you can relate to is, think of it like this, is if you have tension at home between yourself and your wife, or your wife and your husband, how ready are you to be able to engage in like intense work where you need focus? It disrupts the mind. If there's stress and there's conflict going on at home, when you go outside to work and you can't focus. It's hard for you to focus. It's hard for you to maintain your focus. And it's kind of similar, but because it's done early on, it slips into almost like an unconscious need to want to repair the relationship. So the key thing about this is the whole power struggle issue. You don't want to get into power struggles. And this can be generalized across the board with children or with spouses. Because when you get into this vicious cycle of trying to prove a point, you get into this cycle. You try to give your argument for why you're right, and then they try to give their argument. And then it just keeps going back and forth, back and forth. What you want to do is you want to break that, and you want to ask them what they're feeling, and then try to understand it. Show them that you understand it by communicating that to them, and then proceed. There's no power struggle there. You're teaching patience. So the whole modeling thing is very important. The thing about modeling good character, modeling good akhlaq, Quran is read in the home, you're praying salah, you're modeling good behavior. Your child is learning it from you. The Sufis say, actually, there's a saying, تَخَلَّقُوا بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. There's a saying Imam Ghazali has in his book on the attributes of commentary on the attributes of Allah. So they say, make your character like the character of the attributes of Allah. And what are those characteristics? The characteristics, so how do you take these on? It's in the Quran, إِنَّكَ عَلَى خُلُقُ الْعَظِيمِ. The Prophet ﷺ is described as having a tremendous character, the akhlaq, right? So the similar word here. So how that manifests is the akhlaq. And the best example of that akhlaq is the Prophet ﷺ. Because Aisha radiallahu anha said, خُلُقُهُ الْقُرْآنِ خُلُقُ الْقُرْآنِ. So his mannerisms was the Quran. So obviously I can give you a little bit of this, but all of this has been in the reality of the Prophet ﷺ's life. So if we look at it in the manner in which he dealt with even Zayd, his adopted son, radiallahu anhu, he showed extreme patience. HZ Ali radiallahu anhu says that for the first 7 years of your life, you should play with your child. The second 7 years of your life, you should teach the child. And the last 7 years of your life, of the child's life, you should befriend them and let them go. This is very comprehensive in its meaning, although it's a short narration. It is very true, and you can find any psychological literature or proof to show that this is true. Play, for the first 7 years, so until a child is 7 years, play is what work is to an adult. Right? So the child has a necessity to play. So this is very important. And then the next 7 years is where the child's mind is so sharp. This is where people learn Quran and memorize it at this time. Their mind is so sharp that the child can learn all of these things, and this is the prime time to teach them. And then the next 7 years, the child has gone into maturity. By this point, you should have instilled good akhlaq such that it's very natural for the child. You should have instilled Islamic teachings to the child so that it's natural for the child. So at this point, for the next 7 years, you're kind of like sitting back and acting as a guide, letting the child live their life, and you're acting as a guide. It's very different than the American family now, where in the nuclear family, where the child grows up in adolescence and he's still a child. After 14 to about 21 is where maturity, about 21 and later is where maturity really takes place. People were getting married at those ages at 13 and 14 years old during the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. So what is it that we're doing? There's some deficiency in the manner that we're instilling this responsibility. There's actually studies to show that the whole, what did they call it? Adolescence, storm and stress. That's what it's termed in the literature. Adolescence, storm and stress, where the teenager is actually acting out, where rebellious behavior, experimenting, trying to form their own identity, going out there into the world. These very characteristic, aggressive, even aggressive in their nature, these very characteristics of a child, they've shown that in Eastern countries, more even in Oriental countries, this is not the case. So if it was biological and it was a necessity that there is a biological piece, but the environment shapes the biology. The environment affects the mind, right? So a person who's depressed, they say there's a chemical imbalance, right? So how does the chemical imbalance happen? The environmental stressors increase. The person becomes, distressed and sad at a very low point, and then the chemicals start getting screwed up in there. So it's after the fact. It wasn't that it existed prior to. So the whole, this idea that they're biologically, predetermined to be, rebellious at this age is not necessarily true, because in more Eastern countries, they haven't shown the same thing. Adolescence, it's been recently starting to happen due to Western media going across and generalizing across to the Eastern countries as well. But prior to this, it's almost non-existent. And there's a cultural component to that, and we need to, realize, and the effect of the media and TV, we need to realize the effects of these things and actually think about how we're going to raise our children and make sure that we create an environment conducive to deen and caring. It's like there's two different types of environments. Some parents will come in and this authoritarian type of parent will push deen down their throat. Ta'aleem is mandatory. You have to come and sit and listen, and the child is daydreaming, looking around, when's this going to be done, and wants to leave. How about making it into a game? How about giving it to the child, letting him read sometimes? Giving him a sense of responsibility, letting him read, him or her read, and then asking them, what did you learn by this? Why don't you explain what you learned from this? And there's almost this, unfortunate sickness in some, when you go to see children studying Islamic education, it's like they're robots. It's like they're depressed or something. You see them and they're always like, reciting, and then afterwards there's like no energy to do anything else. There has to be a balance of playing with them, showing the understanding, showing that a child can be depressed. It's not an adult's disease. Even children as young as 3 years old commit suicide. It happens. And you think like, how is this possible? Are they even thinking about these things? But you need to show them that you care, show them that you understand, bring them to you, show them love, muhabba, especially fathers, where we think that, that the mother is the only caregiver. But the mother is stuck at home and she's going nuts with the children. The environment has changed. If you look in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and in Eastern communities, there's a concept of community, and we're really lacking that here. There's a concept of community where children were raised by community members. Children were raised by extended family. Now where we fit in, especially living in the suburbs, it caters to the whole nuclear family, which is an alien concept to Islam. This never existed, this idea of this nuclear family, and it's supposed to compensate for the lack of a community. So what you're doing is you're taking the natural state of a human being, where in African countries and Arab countries there's still tribes. The idea of a tribe grouping together, the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where people were grouped together in in Medina, for example, the community of Medina, where everybody used to know who comes for Fajr Salah. People used to go visit the sick. People used to know one another's kids. Can we say the same? It's like, okay, we might be coming for Fajr Salah every day, but we don't know our neighbor. And why is that? We don't know their kids. We don't know their state. About the whole concept of the inheritance, where the Prophet ﷺ thought the inheritance was going to, the right of the neighbor was going to go into the inheritance. That they were going to get a share in his inheritance, so much of a right. How is that, if you think about it, is this imaginable, like here in America, in the nuclear family system? Can we do this? I mean, we have to create the structure for doing it. We have to make that attempt. Where HZ Ali radiallahu anhu, when he didn't have somebody to come visit him for a couple of days, he used to think to himself that what have we done? What have that we've disgraced our Lord, disgraced ourselves, and what have we done to anger our Lord that nobody has come to our house in a couple of days? So people, and the common thing today is that people, you have to call ahead of time. You have to make a plan. If somebody shows up at your door, you're upset. You don't want this person to come over. You don't want that person to come over. You despise this person's children. These concepts are all, stemming out of this disease of having a lack of community, of not being closely knit to one another. In the nuclear family, it's very difficult to form that bond. And I strayed away on a tangent, but where the mother is isolated at home with the children, this is not natural. I mean, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ and during the times of the Sahaba and historically, and even in Eastern communities today, women have social support systems. They have extended family. They have community. They have women's ta'aleem. Other children come into their home freely, in and out. This idea of like this ajib attachment between males and females is very new. That you have to compensate for an entire family. Imagine the pressure on the family that you have to compensate for an entire community in a 4-person structure between a male and a female and the children. So obviously we want to keep our traditional values, we want our wives to stay at home, but we have to keep in context some of the struggles that they may be facing in rearing children, where they're staying at home and the child is, 2, 3 children are becoming, it might not sound nice to say, but burdensome upon them, where the male needs to come in and act as that social support system to compensate, to be able to help her out, to be able to take her off, to be able to take him off her hands. And this is not emasculate. We tend to think that, if we were to do this, we would somehow not be masculine. We need to, we're the breadwinners and we just kind of do that and come home and we don't really need to spend that extra time. Time is the investment. You have to invest in your child. And the investment, the product is what you invest in it. Here the situation was where HZ Omar radiallahu anhu, where they came, was between a father and a son. So there is a relationship that needs to be formed between a father and a son. So this is very important. Now, again, the whole marital disputes are brutal. To have marital disputes within the home is damaging to the child. What you do is to call your spouse any ill name or to say anything to them, to call them stupid in front of the child. You've just lowered the respect that the child has for their father or mother. There's a hierarchy. When we do therapy, family therapy, we bring in the family, and 9 times out of 10, the family structure is broken. Their hierarchy is broken. There should be a hierarchy between the mom and the dad where there's consistency in what they believe. There should never be disagreement brought out into the open. They should be going back and discussing it in private and coming back and say, well, I spoke to your mom and here's what we've decided. Spoke to your dad, here's what we've decided. Or, the mom gives a certain verdict and says that this is the way that it's going to be, and the father contradicts that. Sometimes out of spite, to spite her. I mean, it's very immature and it's childish. But we're teaching these things. Where are they going to learn how to be parents? Where are they going to learn how to be spouses? Especially in the lack of a community, especially in the nuclear family where that's all they see. 90% of these cases of where these people are facing, probably not 90, a little bit less than that, of the cases I see between married couples and trouble with children, is that the parent does not know how to behave. It's almost like it needs to be taught. They just don't know how to have that hierarchy, how not to say certain things, to have this bond. And it's because they didn't learn it growing up. It's because the father was a certain way or the mother was a certain way. The hierarchy is very important. Do not argue even in front of your children. Take it out and put it into, in a private setting. Go off and have a conversation and then come back. If you need to argue, be mature about it. Be an adult. Cool off. Drink water. Take the prescriptions. Say A'udhu Billah. And just kind of relax and say, all right, I need my space. We shouldn't do this right now. And don't think selfish. Think about the child. The child is going to have that effect. And I can't say that we're all perfect, but we can't say that we're perfect. We're going to slip up, but we try as much as possible to maintain this hierarchy, maintain this structure. There's also, now let's say, getting back to the whole, some techniques for the children. I think this is a common question. That's why I want to address it and give it to you guys here. Is the whole, and this might be especially relevant to the sisters, is how do you deal with a child when there's a certain behavior going on and you can't stop them from doing that? Like they're being very stubborn. What you have to do is you have to set your boundary. Let's say up until this point you really didn't think about some of these things. Now you want to reevaluate your family structure, go back home and establish some structure. What you want to do is you want to make sure there's consistent structure. Now, obviously, since there was no structure, this is going to be hard to implement. So what you have to do is you have to set up the structure and not give in. So the child is going to get all of a sudden shocked out of certain behaviors, obviously taking it one step at a time. So if a child is used to a particular form of behavior and you give him a punishment for it, then the child might, really act out. So you have to keep it consistent and repeat that behavior and not give in. If you give in, then you've basically lost. And I don't want to take up any more time. I want Mufti Sahib to also come up here and comment. So maybe he can share with you this story you're sharing about in relation to that. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين جزاكم الله خير.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على سيد الرسل وخاتم الأنبياء وعلى آله الأزكياء وأصحابه الأتقياء أما بعد. First of all, I wanted to thank Human Bhai for coming to our weekly session and blessing us with the knowledge that he's learned throughout his life and his experience. It seemed that many of us aren't really accustomed to sitting in lectures. That's kind of what it's like. Especially when there's so much to discuss in a very short period of time. Sometimes people question that, Mufti Sahib, what you deliver in talks, is this what you learned in Alim class? I said, this is nothing what I've learned in Alim class. When I was becoming an Alim, when I did Ifta course, what I learned, if I was to discuss that in front of the crowd, people would be on the ground sleeping. They'd have no idea what's happening. Because unfortunately we aren't accustomed to understanding or, thinking as quick as we should and processing thoughts and understanding them. It takes time for us, unfortunately. However, what Human Bhai was saying, the points that he mentioned, the things that he was saying, probably many of us may have forgotten them. But the recordings that were made, please refer back to them. There's so much inside them, so many things that he mentioned, so many terms that he mentioned, so many concepts that he explained, The reality is that they hold great value, and there's so much inside them. So many things that he mentioned I didn't know of myself. I had another idea of things, probably I may want to sit down and discuss with Human by, different approaches that I had in my mind, and he can probably help me correct me and explain to me. But the reality is that there's so much to learn, there's so much to learn. And you can't just think you're going to know it without learning it, right? You can't just wake up one day and expect to be great at something. This yesterday I was dealing with a marital case. And both husband and wife, they were very upset, and things were very escalated, and it was very far, and it was very complicated. So I said to both parties, sit down, let me talk to you. Let me explain something to you guys. I said, do you realize that marriage within itself is a task? There's the first stage of marriage, which we call the passion. Then when you step out of that first phase of your marriage, as Ali radiallahu anhu says, it's 1 month long, surur shahrin. After 1 month, if you do not know how to deal with the next phase of marriage, then as Ali radiallahu anhu describes this very same marriage as ghumumu dahrin, a life full of grief. If you know how to deal with marriage, then the first month will be very joyful, and then after that you'll know how to control things. But if you don't understand marriage, if you don't understand how to deal with people, our parents commonly teach children, the boy how to be educated and earn for the family, and they teach the girl how to clean and cook in the family. Very rarely will you find parents that actually teach the children that this is how you live in a house with your brother and sister. This is how you interact with people within the house. This is how you learn how to keep up with another person's attitude problem. This is how you learn how to clean up after your roommate, your brother, your sister when they leave the room dirty. Because we aren't trained how to grow up with people, when we grow up and we move inside with a spouse, once that passion phase passes by, and now we have to live together for the rest of our lives, we aren't accustomed to do that because we were never told that was a skill. And then now when we're in it, we don't realize, and things slip up very quickly, and before we realize, we're very far from where we were hoping we would be. The same thing goes with child upbringing. It's a skill. It's a very unique skill. It's a very, very, very unique skill, and it requires a lot of thought. Without skill, if you think that you're going to just bring this child from 0 to 100 without studying, without giving thought to it, without speaking to someone, the reality is that you're playing a joke on yourself. You'll think of a few thoughts, you'll experiment back and forth before you know it, the child's 7 years old, 8 years old, and a great portion of his life is already gone. The portion of the child's life where you're supposed to capture the child and have that child with you, you've lost that part because you were busy experimenting, going back and forth, and every time you failed is busting out of a can of beans and exploding on the child. You've caused a lot of harm to the child already. So it's very important that you learn these things. Every single one of us. Do not take it as granted that yes, we're just going to know how to do it. No one learns just how to do things. You have to learn how to do things correctly and appropriately. See, the reality is that, and this is what I wanted to mention, I'll keep this short, probably inshallah in 10 minutes, and we'll finish off, is that our future lies on our youth, our children. This is one thing we must accept. If I wish for tomorrow's community, for 100 years from now, our children still to be ulama, for there still to be muftis, for there still to be muballighs and da'is within our community, for there to be mutasawwifin in our community, for there to be different people in our communities who can support our deen throughout the struggles of the society, then the reality is we have to make that investment in our child. Because I can be a very motivated person, a charged person. I can push and push and push to my last breath until I fall dead on the ground. But once I die, once I'm gone, now what? Now who's next? Who's going to come in place? When Ibrahim alayhi salam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when Zakaria alayhi salam made dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did they say? That, oh Allah, give me a child who will continue the mission that I started. Ibrahim alayhi salam made this dua. That, oh Allah, give me a child that will continue my mission. Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't give him one prophet as a child, he gave him 4 prophet children. 4 generations. Prophet, their prophet, their prophet, their prophet. Nabi, ibn Nabi, ibn Nabi, ibn Nabi, ibn Nabi. 4 prophets came through his generation because of the sincerity in his dua. Zakaria alayhi salam made the very same dua. That, oh Allah, I started this mission, I changed this community, but for the next generation, we need something. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with Yahya alayhi salam. For Islam to go from one community to the next, from one generation to the next, we need to make an investment within our children. The saddest thing that can happen within our society is that the day you die, or once you die, someone comes to your grave and tells you that, man, you did a bad job of bringing up your children. Do you know, if you were alive today, you would have committed suicide knowing that today your son just left the fold of Islam. That would be the saddest day. That someone came and told you and I that your son left the folds of Islam. Over crying, was so sad. I'm so upset that my son left the fold of Islam. Na'udhu billahi min dhalik. It's a shocker for me. I was expecting him to be this, that, and the other, and I was thinking that, but what investment did you make in the child for him to live with Islam? What did you give to the child? Did you teach the child tawakkul? Did you teach the child the sunnah? Did you give the child an Islamic life? Did you give the child the importance of Islam within its heart? You didn't. So what you're getting is what you're getting. Right? Jaisi karni waisi barni. What you give is what you get. That's the principle of life. What goes around comes around. What you teach that child is exactly what that child is going to learn. We have situations and story within our society. Someone called us a few days ago that a brother, a few weeks ago I was told, that one brother that was, subhanAllah, such a great brother, met him time after time, probably not even 20 years old, maybe 21 years old, and he opened the announcements to his family and all of his friends that from today onwards, don't say assalamu alaikum to me, I'm no longer a Muslim, I'm now an atheist. Living within our community. We're hearing stories like this. And subhanAllah, one brother that we knew so well, such a good friend of ours, and today he openly says that I'm an atheist now, I'm no longer a Muslim. Now, may Allah save. I'm not saying that our children will say this. Inshallah, they will never say this. Inshallah, our children will be those who will bring others and make them say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu rasul. But we have to bring them in that manner. Men of substance. We need men of substance within our society. We can't have kokalapan. Right? Kokalapan means emptiness. We can't have that. We don't need empty men within our society. We don't want any Muslims being born within our society who are only going to say La ilaha illallah as a tradition. We need people within our society. We need children. We need youth. Our children must grow to be men made of substance. The Ummah was crying. Palestine was crying. It had been years since they'd ever laughed or smiled. And they were waiting for one man to be born with substance. And that one man came. Salahuddin Ayyubi came. He was a man made of substance. And that one man made of substance changed the entire world. And he changed the faces of the women in Palestine. And when he came inside with the raya of Islam, with the flag of Islam, there wasn't a single person, not a single Muslim that day who wasn't shouting out, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. Once again, they can proudly speak. Who made this change? One man made of substance. One Rasulullah made of substance, and today we see the result here. We need men made of substance. One man Ilyas rahmatullah alayh, and he leaves, generations later, you go to a single country and find where there isn't the word of da'wah and tabligh taking place. One man of substance. How many men? One man. This is what we need within our community. And this is the purpose why I focused on this last week, the week before, and we asked Brother Human to come and speak to us. Because in our society, we can't have any more generations where we will have men that are just empty. Men that are useless to deen. Men that aren't supporting or aren't contributing towards our deen. We need children that could be Imam Bukhari again. We need children that can bring back the ruhaniyat and the spirituality of Imam Ghazali rahmatullahi alayhi back to our society. We need men who are ready to struggle like Mawlana Ilyas rahmatullahi alayhi. We need men like this coming back into our society. And these men can only come if their parents are made of substance. We need men of substance. These men of substance aren't just going to come out of the spoof. We need men of substance, and these men of substance are only going to come from parents that are made from substance. And this substance that I keep saying, right? What is this substance that I'm talking about? We need men of substance, which is iman. We need men of iman. We need men of yaqeen. We need men of tawakkul. We need men that are fueled and they drive and they push at the thought that if I serve this deen, tomorrow I'm going to be standing next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with my hand in his hand, walking inside paradise. This is the type of people we need in today's day and age. And this is the type of people that our children will need. And this is the type of people their children will need. And every nation will need a person like this who can guide the nation. Always remember this. And if we are substance within ourselves, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and this was the very same thing that Human Bhai was mentioning right now. That our parents, our children will learn from us. If we're arguing in front of one another, our children are going to learn something. If we're disputing in front of our children are going to learn something. If we push them away at the time of the phone call, they're going to learn something. Our children will learn from us. And if we are made of substance, if we are made of Islam, Deen, Quran, Sunnah, if we are made of these things, these ingredients, then believe it or not, our children will grow up to be the greatest Muslims, inshallah al-aziz. History repeats itself. There was a lady at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the name of Ammara. Have you ever heard of that name before? Any of you heard of the name of Ammara? Ammara radiallahu anha was the mother who stood next to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and defended Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Qumma, he comes to attack Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is behind her and she's standing there. Her sons are there. And then what happens is that she stands in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The enemy wants to attack Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She stands in front of the enemy. The enemy says, "Move out of my way, old lady." She says that, "Not over my dead body are you going to reach Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." That's not happening. He goes to the right, she steps to the right. He goes to the left, she steps to the left. She said, "I wasn't joking. If you want to get to him, over my dead body." The children are looking at this. What are the children doing? They're viewing this. They're viewing this. Look at this old lady. What is she doing? Ibn Qumma says, "Then take it your way." And he takes his sword and he shatters her right in the shoulder. He hits her so hard in her shoulder that she loses her shoulder. She falls to the ground. The Sahaba take Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they flee from there. The child, just by seeing this, how this mother was ready to give her life for the sake of one Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She had a child by the name of Habib radiallahu anhu. What was his name? Habib. Let me tell you the story of Habib. What lesson he learned from his child at that time and how he implemented it when he grew up. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam departed from this world, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he dispatched an army to fight against a person by the name of Musaylama. What was his name? Musaylama. Kadhab. What does Kadhab mean in Arabic? Not liar, the great liar. It's fa'alun, it's mubalagha in there. Great liar. So this person claimed to be a prophet during the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He claimed to be a prophet during the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wrote a letter to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that I am a prophet, you're a prophet, so let's split the lands. What does he say? Let's split. I take 50% land, you take 50% land. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replies back by saying that the letter is from Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to Musaylama Kadhab, Musaylama the liar. You're no land, you're no prophet. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam replies back by saying, "Inna al-arda lillah yurithuha man yasha'u min ibadihi." That you can't claim land. This land is for Allah and Allah gives it to His servants. I am the prophet of Allah and I will distribute it amongst the servants of Allah. You can't come and claim it. So now what happens is that this letter that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent in retaliation to Musaylama's letter was delivered at the hand of the Sahabi whose name was Habib, the son of Ammar. Habib brings this letter and he delivers it to Musaylama. Musaylama gets really mad when he reads this letter. He puts it to the side and he looks at Habib and he says to him, do you believe that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah? He goes, "Yes, I believe Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." He goes, "Do you believe I am the messenger of Allah?" Habib replies back by saying, "I can't hear you." So he gets mad. He goes, "Do you believe Muhammad is the messenger of Allah?" He goes, "There's no doubt in that. He is definitely the messenger of Allah." "How about me?" "I can't hear you." So he says the third time, "Do you believe Muhammad is the messenger of Allah?" He goes, "Yes, he is." "How about me?" Because I can't hear you. So now Musaylama realizes that this kid's playing a game with him. So he tells his men to grab his hand and chop his wrist off. So they bring the sword, his hand, and they chop his wrist off. And Habib radiallahu anhu is in pain. Just as he saw his mother being in pain defending Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he's questioned, "Do you believe Muhammad is the messenger of Allah?" He goes, "Of course he is." "How about me?" He goes, "I can't hear you." And they take his other wrist, and they cut his other wrist off. And they question him again that, "Do you believe Muhammad is the messenger of Allah?" He goes, "Of course he is." "How about me?" He goes, "Honestly, I can't hear what you're saying." And one part by one part, they cut this person's limbs off until he becomes shaheed. He leaves this world. Ammar radiallahu anha, when she hears this, she says, "That lanti layin insan, he killed my son, I'm going to take revenge from him." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves this world, and Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu dispatches an army towards Musaylama Kadhab, in which he himself also takes part. Musaylama is this giant, very big guy, and he's in the battlefield and he's fighting, and anyone that comes in front of him is being knocked out. Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, being thin and slim, he tells Khalid bin Walid, "Let's tag team this guy." What do they say? "You and I together, let's take him out." Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu was very slim, but he was a man of courage. And Khalid bin Walid is this giant, huge person. His forearm is the size of the normal man's thighs. And these two, they charge at him together. Khalid bin Walid comes from one side, he strikes him. Abu Bakr strikes him from the other side. He falls off his horse. When he falls off his horse, there's two people that are charging towards him. How many people? Two people. The first was a slave who killed Hamza radiallahu anhu. And when he killed Hamza radiallahu anhu, the uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after he accepted Islam, he made a promise that just as before Islam I killed the most beloved to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, now after accepting Islam I will kill the most hated to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'm going to kill this man right here. And he's running towards him with his spear that he killed Hamza radiallahu anhu with. And on the other hand, this old lady is dragging her sword saying that you killed my son. I'm going to take you out. And she comes to him, she hits him hard. Wahshi comes and takes his spear and puts it through, and Musaylama Kadhab is dead. Children like Habib and Zayd were born through mothers like Ammar radiallahu anha. Right? Children like Abdullah bin Zubayr were born with the parenting of Asma radiallahu anha. The lady who used to travel, she was pregnant 8 months. How many months was she pregnant? 8 months. And she walked through the heat. And she climbed the mountain. And she went and delivered the food to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was the lady. 8 months pregnant, she's climbing a mountain and delivering food to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. For you and I, that may be something small, but for the sisters, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, what kind of sacrifice that takes. They served Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They instilled within their children's heart iman, yaqeen, and tawakkul, paradise, the pleasure of Allah, and there's nothing you need after that at all. And what happens is, her son Abdullah bin Zubayr is being killed. The last day he's going to live of his life. The people have surrounded Makkah Mukarramah. And they're charging in Makkah Mukarramah. All of his soldiers have left his side. He is the correct and rightful Khalifa of the time. Everyone has left his side. The only people remaining with him are a handful. And tomorrow will be the last battle of his life. He comes to his mother, Haz Asma, and he says, Assalamu alaikum, my mother. His mother says, oh my son, I hear fear in your voice. What does she say? She's blind at the time. She's 99 years old. Very later on in life. She says, I hear fear in your voice. He says, mother, the enemy has come to the doorstep. And life is over now. So the mother says, what are you thinking? He says, the enemy gives me 3 options. The first option is that either I surrender, either I leave Makkah and go live in the jungle somewhere, or either they kill me. She says, what do you think? What are you going to do? He says to his mother that this is why I came here. I wanted to get your advice what I should do. So she said that if you run away in the world, and if you continue to live, then you will have wasted all the people who died in this battle so far. And if you die in the path of Allah, then you will be a rightful man. And your abode will be paradise. He then tells his mother, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. I'm going now. He goes to his mother and he kisses his mother. And when he kisses his mother, when he hugs his mother feels armor. She says to her son, what are you wearing? He says, I'm wearing armor. Why? He said, I wore this for your sake. She says that men don't wear these things right here. Take this off. This is a mother who's teaching her son yaqeen and tawakkul. Her son is being thrown in the pit. Her son takes off his armor in front of his mother and lies it on the ground. And when he's leaving, he has tears in his eyes and he's walking out. And his mother says, oh my son, why are you scared? What's wrong with you? He says, I don't fear death anymore, but the only thing I fear is that once I die, these people are going to mutilate my body. The mother says that the goat doesn't feel the pain of being skinned once it's slaughtered. What does she say? The goat doesn't feel the pain of being skinned once it's slaughtered. Go and give your life in the path of Allah. And don't be afraid. Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu, he goes there. He's standing in front of the Kaaba. He's fighting. The entire world is coming against him. And he knows that he's only standing there for a few more minutes. One person takes something and he hits him on the leg. And Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu, his leg twists and he falls on the ground. Next man comes, he hits him from one side. Another person comes, hits him from the other side. And before you know it, Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu is killed and he's shaheed. These women, can you imagine this? Ask a mother sitting in this gathering. Ask a father sitting here. That would you ever tell your son that have such yaqeen and tawakkul on Allah, that sacrifice your life and your jannah is in front of you? Which parent can say this today to their child? Which parent has given such tarbiyah that even if the parent said it, the child is ready to accept it? Which parent can say this today? These were parents that fueled their children on iman billah, tawakkul on Allah, reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every day these children were taught that today you live as a Muslim, it's a bounty of Allah, it's a favor of Allah. Don't ever overlook this. Tomorrow, you will grow as a Muslim, and the day after that you will live as a Muslim, and the day you will die defending Islam. This mother, after Abdullah bin Zubayr, her son passes away, he's hung on the doors, his body is mutilated on the gates of Makkah. She goes to her son, and when she goes to her son, she goes to the slave because she's blind, she can't see. And when she goes to the gates where her son's body is hanging there, what does she say? She says, "Ama ana li hadhihi al-faris an yanzil?" Has the time not come for this knight to step off his horse now? And he's there and he's dead. And she takes that body and she lifts it and she puts it on the ground. And after she puts it on the ground, Hajjaj bin Yusuf orders that the body of Abdullah bin Zubayr be thrown in the graveyard of the Jews. And inside the Jewish graveyard, Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anhu's body is thrown there. And Asma radiallahu anha, she picks up the body from there and she says that my son was no Jew. My son was a Muslim. And my son was a believer. And this is a son that was fed. This is a son right here that when he was born, the first thing that went inside his mouth, what was it? What was the first thing that went inside this child's mouth when he was born? The date that was chewed by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My son was no kafir. My son is a child who grew up with the saliva of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam inside his mouth. And she takes her son to the Muslim graveyard, she buries the son, and then she says, Oh Allah, 99 years of my life have passed by. And I lived these years and I made dua to you that I do not want to die without seeing the outcome of my tarbiyah to my child. What is her dua? Throughout her life, I don't want to die without seeing the result of my tarbiyah to my child. Oh Allah, I am a successful mother. And this is my successful product. My time in this world is finished now. 1 week later, Asma radiallahu anha passes away. How many weeks later? 1 week later, she leaves this world. The closing point. These were the women, these were the men. These were the people that cared for the future. They weren't just worried about themselves that if I pray my salah, that's enough. Let me wake up for Fajr and go pray and leave my child sleep in the bed there. That's not how these parents were. These parents were worried about their children. They were worried about the akhirah. They were worried about the future. They weren't there for the quick buck that let us, get a few things done now and then whatever happens, let it happen. No. These children, these parents were focused. And because of their sacrifice, today we see the results. And always remember this. Behind every success, there is a sacrifice. Behind a successful child is a sacrifice of a mother, is a sacrifice of a parent. Behind a successful nation, there was a sacrifice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Always remember this principle. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the ability to be walking, talking role models for our children. The greatest point that I learned from what Human Bai said right now is that your children will watch you and they will learn from you. They won't be studying from books. Everything they learn in life will be from you. As a parent, as a father, make yourself the best father that's out there. Right? As a mother, be the best mother that's out there. You have to be the mother that when the child sees you, the child thinks of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The child, when he sees you, sees a perfect person in front of him. You have to be the father that when the child sees you, the child doesn't run away, the child goes towards you. The child should love you. The child should want to sit with you. The child should want to learn from you. The child should hold you as the greatest role model in life. So with this I finish, and I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us all the ability to be great Muslims, inshaAllah al-Aziz. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us, every single person sitting here in this gathering, a parent to a successful child. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those that our children will stand in front of Allah on the Day of Judgment and beg Allah that, oh Allah, there is nowhere in the world I will go in Jannah without this parent right here. Our children should not be the ones that push us into Jahannam. Our children should be the ones, inshaAllah, that will drag us into paradise along with them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all a long life of health and iman. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us a life in which the last portion is better than the earlier portion. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the kalima la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah at the time of our death. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the burial of Jannat al-Baqi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala resurrect us on the Day of Judgment along with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honor us to drink from the hands of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam on that day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wave away from us the hisab kitab on the Day of Judgment. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us first entry into paradise along with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us united in these gatherings in this world. And just as we are gathered and united today, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gather us all and reunite us all in Jannah. Subhanallah bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wa akhiru da'wana. Alhamdulillah.